Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? You're here with Pip and Peter.
Hi, I'm Pip.
What's going on, Mark?
Keith, how you doing, man?
Yeah, same old, same old.
The beautiful moon is up tonight.
Yep.
Up here, it's cloudier. I was actually outside, had the dome all open, ready to start a live stream. Let's see if we can have all three of us on astroimaginglive.com, but it was not to be.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to... I was looking at a couple different chat options for that, and I think I'm going to switch out the chat to a more stable, less flashy, loading kind of chat that's on there now.
Yeah, I think simple is better in this case. I mean, but, you know, it's okay.
Yeah,
but you're right.
Yeah, it just because it's flash based, the chat in there, it's I don't know, it just takes a while to load, and then when it does load, it's like, I don't know, it's just weird. But I was looking at more of a I have to pay for it, but I mean, I think it will be weird. It's not much. It's like, you know, $3 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it would benefit greatly because it's CSS based, so it's, you don't have to worry about all that loading crap and that. But we'll get it working eventually. We'll work on it. We'll tweak it.
Sure.
It's just a matter of getting time.
Yeah.
So we got a good amount of people watching in the room right now. I hope you all are enjoying it. It's a pretty nice night down in Miami. I don't know if you have it on, Mark, but
I do.
Not too shabby looking.
Yeah, there's 4 people watching and 4 more who are bored and 2 more that are, well, I can't even say what they're doing. But anyway, I'm kidding, of course.
What are you
There's
eating?
5 people.
Anything good?
Yeah, I actually and that's like rude. You should never do that on a live show. And I just
well, I told you when I
had one thing
contacted
to
you.
eat.
We're just gonna kind of just shoot the breeze. We decided to do this in the last 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah, but and I grabbed a couple of Triscuits is all I did, but not a problem. I don't need to eat anything and mess with everybody's hearing. I hate when people do that to me. I don't want to be the one to do it to you.
You know, I'm so gonna do that to you on your live.
No, you always you make other noises. Like oh, see what I mean.
If you didn't see the comment video, the one lady commented like, "What was that farting noise in the beginning?"
That was a farting noise in the beginning.
I was like, really? You don't have a sense of humor? Jeez Louise. It's like, oh, you have an astronomy channel. You have to be serious 100% of the time. It's like, no. She don't know me too well, does she?
No, she don't know you.
So what do you got on tap? Anything good coming up?
Yeah. I shot the latter half of season 4 of the show What on Earth 2 days ago. They were here from 9 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. We just went straight through and did however many, 14, 15 hours of maybe 13 hours of filming. They gave me I had 15 stories to do this time, and when they came out a couple months ago, I did 13 stories. So in this season, I've got like a 28 story list that I'm involved with in that series. So
and all that time, it'll end up being what, like 7.5 minutes on television?
Well, 4.2. No, I don't know. Seconds.
Well,
no,
give us a scoop. Was there any interesting ones? You don't have to give us the details, obviously, because they haven't aired yet. But
yeah, they haven't aired, so I can't. But I will do this because I'm contractually obligated not to say those things. But right. I will say this: What on Earth differs from NASA's Unexplained Files in that these guys they look at satellite imagery that is taken, and they don't take Google Earth images. They take satellite images that are taken from other sources, Landsat. There's an occasional Google Earth image, and usually there might be a stitching artifact where they combine multiple pictures and it makes a weird artifact. One that comes to mind, for instance, is one episode which I think some folks who are watching probably have seen. I've heard that people say they've seen it. It got pretty far out there, I guess. And that was one where they showed some on Loch Ness. You actually saw this creature that looked like it was swimming just under the surface. And when I looked at it, I said, well, okay, what could that be? And when I figured it out, we all laughed because it was actually a stitching artifact, because it was actually a boat wake, but the boat got stitched out and the wake was left, and so all you had was this wake all by itself traveling down Loch Ness.
Nice.
You know, that was a still image, of course, but when I actually processed the head of the wake where the front end was, you can actually see a very, very faint remnant of the original bow. And that was cool. You know, and those are the kinds of, like, then in one episode I did, I figured out that the Russians actually shot down the Ukrainian airliner that went down. Because the airliner, the Russians offered as evidence this satellite photo that showed an apparent Ukrainian aircraft shooting down this airliner.
Right.
And it was a satellite image. Now, whenever you see, like, that's a fortuitous event. I mean, it even showed the missile being fired, or en route, I should say. And when I looked at it, I said, well, that aircraft isn't an air-to-air aircraft anyway. That's a air-to-ground aircraft. It doesn't have air-to-air missiles. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two was the airliner itself wasn't the Malaysian Air at all. It was actually a livery ship that was cut and pasted in, because the side, okay, the Malaysian airliner, Malaysian Air in particular, their logo was up on the side of the fuselage, on the upper half of the fuselage. So from above, you'd see it. Okay?
You're not giving too much away for the TV show, are you?
No. This aired already. This was
okay.
Just to give you an idea of the kinds of things I look at.
Right.
So, and you'd see it, but when I looked at the airliner itself, it was just pure white. So research pointed out to me that livery airliners, those that are being ferried from place to place, before they're owned by the airline, are all white. And then the logo's painted on later. And that's exactly what this was. It was a livery airliner. And when I did a profile analysis of the airliner shape, it wasn't even a right plane. It was a completely different aircraft. But you know what? I think in their haste to try and blame the Ukrainians for this, they tried to put something together quickly. But, you know, when I saw the satellite imagery, I basically, I guess anyone who knows a few things about aircraft could have picked this out. And the other thing that I didn't catch that someone else caught was the fact that some of the ground imagery that was associated with these images looked like it had been cut and pasted or copied and duplicated in other areas. Now,
have you ever had a case, like, say, from What on Earth or NASA's Unexplained Files? Have you ever had a case that just came up and, like, you see what they're presenting you and you just look at them in utter disgust? Like, are you really showing me this? Like, you guys couldn't figure this out? Like, have you ever had that happen?
Yeah, and part of the problem is that when we do these shows, I'm told right up front, you know, we speak in the present tense about all these stories, number one. Number two, I can't use any language that's going to confuse anybody. So if I start going all Mr. Science, they'll stop me and say, can you say that simpler?
I can see somebody just coming to you and say, Mark, keep it stupid. Okay?
Well, they've never said that, because they actually respect their listeners far more than many shows I know. But they're trying to, you know, they try to encourage you to be more explanatory. So,
well, I mean, that's what you're good at to begin with. So, I mean, that's not. I can't really see that being a problem for you anyway.
No, and I haven't chastised them. I haven't said, "Yeah, you guys," you know, I haven't never said, like you said. I never said, you know, "Are you giving me this?" Because the bottom line is that they're all interesting stories, and they know enough now to not give me anything that would be considered stupid. You know, they actually, it's a fairly intelligent show, at least behind the scenes. The final products sometimes seem a little campy, just because of the editing and the way they did the drama.
Who's the producer of that show? You know?
The production company is WAG TV in London. Okay. and actually, I was their first stop in the USA tour this time, so I had these fresh-faced crew people here, and it's like, wow, this is great. Usually, I get the guys that show up all beleaguered, and they go, okay, I hope we don't have to go another 14 hours.
Well, did you pull Clem out on them?
No,
that really scared the crap out of them. Let me back back overseas quick.
The last time they were here, though, Clem came out. and I thought that was very very funny.
Yeah.
You know.
Any conferences coming up or anything?
Yeah, I got I'm going to be out at Devil's Tower, Wyoming in a couple weeks. Actually,
that's right. That is
14 through 16. And then what's funny is the organizers actually managed to get themselves some airtime on the local news shows, and they kind of been making the rounds, which is very good because this is their first rodeo. You know how you always say, this ain't my first rodeo. Well, it's their first rodeo.
Right.
And I talked to them for like an hour and a half, you know, a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, actually about a month ago, sorry. And I said to them, this is what you do, this is what you do. Because they didn't realize that the speakers actually are compensated. They didn't know that. They thought if you just invite them, they'll come. they didn't even think about, and then this is not saying that they don't know what they're doing.
If you invite them, they will come.
Yes, field of screams, and they didn't know that the speakers' airfare had to be taken care of. So they actually had 3 speakers drop out.
Wow.
And then suddenly, when I talked to them, they said, "Oh, I don't know what's wrong." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you how this usually works." I said, and I went through the whole thing about what people do, what they expect. Then I proceeded to get Rojas to actually fill in, because Alejandro's got a wonderful lecture that he does on Spielberg and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Because September 1st, Close Encounters in theaters nationwide. Now, why would they do that? Well, they did it because it's been remastered in 4K video, and it's stunning. Now, and that's Doug Trumbull worked on that. He's the guy that did the visual effects for that movie, and so in fact, Doug and I were asked to be keynote speakers at that conference, but Doug couldn't do it, and then I just decided I'll do a regular talk. But I'm doing 3 on Friday. I'm doing training for the Mutual UFO Network folks in Wyoming. Saturday, I'm doing a talk on exoplanets and so forth. And then Sunday, I'm going to do a talk on the UFOTOG system that we're creating, which is the UFO hunting platform that we're making. We want to make hundreds of.
Nice.
And yeah, well, it's a fun thing, you know.
Speaking of UFOTOG, I mean, is there? Have you heard anything from Dave Schock lately about his health or how he's doing?
You know what? I don't. I have not heard. I don't know anything about Dave. I don't know if you know. I thought he was. I mean, has he dropped out of sight?
Well, I haven't heard from him in a while, and I was kind of thinking about it the other day. I was like, man, we should really get an update on the CubeSat for disclosure stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
So I know he had one of the guys working on it or something had a falling out with Gaia, somebody that represents Gaia or something like that, and Gaia wanted to, of course, make it only available, like the data and everything, only available to subscription people, and it was
yeah. See, they're trying to start limiting who can see the data.
Yeah, like always.
And that's the thing that Doug and I absolutely refuse to do. This is everyone's data. This isn't just ours. Yeah, okay, we're making the units. Big deal. Okay, but what the units show, the data they collect, that's that isn't something that anyone should own. That belongs to humanity, man. That belongs to all.
Especially when it's when there's any part of public funding involved. You know what I mean? It should be, especially on I'm not talking about like with taxes and stuff like that, because obviously. But like if there's through like GoFundMe's or anything like that, that it should be public.
Right. I mean, we know about that guy that was doing a GoFundMe so he could buy himself a van. Okay, and I was thinking to myself, oh, that's interesting, because what that means to me is everyone who contributes owns the van and has a right to use it. You know.
So you could say, hey, I'm coming over to the UK. I don't feel like renting a car. I'm just going to take the van. I donated, $500. That should be like 3 or 4 days at least.
That's right. I mean, how much is a rental? By the way, Amanda says that Dave Schock lost his internet connection for a while, so maybe that's what's going on.
Okay. But Amanda, if you could just tell us in the chat, is his health getting better? Is he? Because I know he was really going through it there for a while. So just let us know if you heard anything, whether on how he's doing, anything like that. But yeah, and by the way, I'll talk to you more about this like off air. But I want to try to get you down here in September for a weekend if I can.
It is September.
I mean October.
Okay. Well, the only weekend that's bad, I think, is the weekend of I think it's the 7th. I have a conference to talk at in Leominster, Massachusetts.
I think it's going to be more towards like right before Halloween and stuff, considering how the moon cycle's going. Because I want to go out and I got full access to those scopes, those 24-inch scopes out.
Oh, you do? That's right.
They gave us full access to the building. They will allow us to live stream, and they will allow us to project it on the outside of the building for anybody, so we can invite a whole bunch of people and they can watch from the outside on a big, 30-foot projection screen.
Well, we can do a live audience stream. That would be so good. I mean,
on top of that, though, I got I went out and tested their internet, and here their internet is like magnificent. Like, we're talking about like 100 megabytes per second download, and I think it was like almost 80 upload speed. So we'll be able to stream there. And I was thinking about, well, maybe if I got you down here, we'll stream like one of the scopes to your channel and the other one to this one.
Oh, that's very cool. And if they're all aligned, then it's just a matter we can actually do a sky tour down there, and we could do a P&K moon view down there
from the same building in the same room, just two different scopes.
Yeah, that must be a roll-off roof observatory then, a big roll-off roof.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I was just looking in amazement at what they did. I was surprised they put that much money into a public observatory. I really did, and it was done. It was done by the Celestron Corp, who was a power, place. But and I was just really surprised how nice the people were. I mean, it is run by a local astronomy group, and it turns out that the guys, when I went down to talk to them, they were guys that actually watched the stream. So nice. I was like, yeah.
So where are they located?
They are about the town. I don't know what the town's considered, because it's like, if you ever heard of a place called Muddy Run Park in Pennsylvania, there's a big Muddy Run reservoir that Exelon owns, and a lot of people go out there for fishing, and it's just a big, huge, nature park, and that's where they put it at. Wow. So it's right along. I mean, if anybody knows the area or anything, it's right along 372, around 72 or 74, I believe it is, in that general vicinity. It's right by the Susquehanna River. That's where it dumps into. But yeah, so I want to try to do that, and I told them that I was going to try to aim for after the new moon in October. So
okay.
And I don't want it to be anywhere around full. I want it to be just like this, or maybe a little bit sooner.
Yeah, I think a waxing crescent, or a waxing, between first quarter and waxing.
Yeah, I think if it's a first quarter one, that'll allow, not only if we are doing the dual scope, that'll be enough light, of course, for what we do, but it'll also be less enough light for what you do. You know what I mean? It's not going to be blinding the sky.
Right, and I just thought of that, because that would mean that it'll be up for several hours. Mm-hmm. It'll be up for at least 6 hours, 3 hours rather. So you'd actually get you can get some time. 6 hours actually. So you'll actually get some time with it.
And we get to go down and play with all the new equipment. You know what I mean? So why not?
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and they have multiple cameras down there that you can use. I told them that you'd probably bring yours if you wanted, but but they do have because they have the normal Orion scopes, like the cameras and everything. So. Yeah, like I want to try to do that.
Starseek.
And I want to try to log that up. I want to try to do it by the end of September. But I'll talk to you more about it off air.
That's fine.
That way we get done. I think it'd be pretty cool. Just do a weekend or something. With the huge scopes.
I'll just have to find a place to stay. I don't really have any friends down in Pennsylvania. That's the joke, man. It's a joke.
Hey, listen, I will put a tent in the yard for you and everything.
Yeah, I'll put a tent. I'll even let you have a porta potty if you can. If you want to rent one, you can rent one.
Hell no, you're out here in the middle of nowhere. You're gonna go pee in the bushes. That's considered watering.
Yeah, right. Man, that's cool. What a good idea.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can do it, because of the whole Eclipse thing just fell apart for me, and I was like, jeez, and I want to start doing more of that stuff. And if we get in good down there, we might just start normally broadcasting from there, because I did talk to the guy about maybe him operating the scope down there, because he's down there usually at least 4 days out of the week, the astronomy club guy. And I was like, well, I can just patch in and feed you right through P&K if you want to broadcast it. So
yeah. Of course, that means that if you do that, then they're gonna feel, okay, well, now our scope can't be turned off the moon to something else I want to see, because
there's two scopes.
Oh, that's true. what size scopes are they?
The one is a 24-inch, and the other one I think is a 16.
Okay, so they're both reflectors, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because if they were refractors, they would be very, very big.
And we had, oh, you know what? We had somebody in here earlier, and I was trying to explain this, and he asked like numerous times, and I'm just going to ask you to do it one more time, real quick. Why? I just feel stupid asking that, but why do all the craters look like they're the same depth, and why don't we see angled impacts? We do, but you know, just go ahead and run with it.
Yeah. In short, when we look at the moon, and Paul's like shaking his head yes and no via the moon. Okay. When we look at the moon and look at the craters, they are at various different depths. They're not all the same depth. In fact, they're at radically different depths.
Does it come down to perspective from where we're viewing?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from being 240,000 miles away with an inability to discern the scale of the craters, for one. Number two, inability to discern the depth that the craters are going. And when people look at the moon, they just look at the shadows, and they figure that that's telling them all they need to know. It's not entirely true. But that's the way it is. Now, the other reason that they look like they're all the same depth has to do with the fact that when the near side of the moon that we see, which is the only side of the moon that really has oceans, you know, Maria, seas, we could talk about why that's the case. But then these craters all look like they're the same depth because, and they look flat on the bottom, and it's because they are flat on the bottom. And why is that? Well, it's because lava from the impacts filled the craters up like a cup. You know, it's a gouged out hole, and the impact, of course, melted a huge amount of rock, and it also melted the underlying strata. And there's all kinds of shocks that get imparted to the underlying strata. You see terraced craters, which are the result of that. You see rings in the craters, actually. Okay, ringed craters you see. Mm-hmm. Usually the rings are about halfway out from the center, as you know. And those features that we're seeing are the result, in the flat bottoms especially, are the result of the fact that the melting, all right, with a moon this size, just over 2,000 miles in diameter, and it has a certain amount of gravity, when a crater is made, the lava is going to fill it to a certain extent as it cools. And this basically, all these impacts happen near the same time in terms of cosmic scale. Okay, they happened, you know, over 3 billion years ago, except for some few that we've actually seen hit the moon.
Right.
You know, in modern times, but the moon keeps getting hit, but not with nearly the same frequency that we have now. That we had then, I mean. So they're flat bottom craters because lava filled in the craters. Further, every impact throws up a huge amount of debris. That debris settles back down on the moon. The moon only has 1/6 of our gravity, so something thrown up in the air can travel quite a distance before it settles down.
Let me ask you, because we did have a question on that front from Keith Culpepper there in the chat, and it's basically like some of these bigger craters, these bigger complex craters.
Yes.
When those impacts happened, how far was the ejecta? You know, obviously it was a lot more than what the actual central peaks are. Have some settlement and whatnot. Like, what would that actually look like? I mean, would it, you know, just look like a giant fireball shooting out of the moon surface, especially if you were on an angle where you had the dark sky background?
Well, in a lot of cases, let's say that we had a crater the size of Copernicus get formed again by an impactor. Let's say it was 30 miles across or whatever. And now the size of the crater will depend also on the energy that it strikes the moon with, and this depends on its angle of attack to the moon. That is, is it coming straight at the moon or on an angle? And we'll talk about the glancing blow craters in a minute. But that matters to a great degree, and also the speed of impact. If a rock is being pulled by the sun and is moving toward the sun, then the moon's in the way, and it hits the moon straight down at a very, very high impact speed, well then you can get an Imbrium size impact, Mare Imbrium size impact. Okay, you can get a Mare Orientale type size impact, which is a huge impact. And so when you look at the moon overall, some of the craters are made by objects that might have been the same size. Thanks, Paul. Or was that you? Is that you putting up the diameter of the moon?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So when you see Now, these impacts, sometimes these craters some of these craters are made by the same relative sized object. It's just that the object was going much faster in one case, a little bit slower in another case. Now, the moon, because when objects are hitting the moon, everyone thinks, well, they can just sort of skip sideways, sort of off the moon, bing, and just kind of go off to the side, and like skipping stones on water. The problem is the moon has gravity. Okay, now it's only 1/6, but anything caught in the moon's gravity will tend to fall vertically by the time it's hitting the moon, because it's being pulled toward the moon. The objects that don't do that necessarily are the ones that actually are very high velocity, much higher than typical, and those could actually create craters, skip across the moon and keep right on going, bounce off the moon and keep going.
So you're saying that like a pretty big meteor impact could cause multiple craters?
Well, and they do, and they have.
Mm-hmm.
When you look on the moon, you can see that some craters have a name, well, they all have a name, okay? And then you see the same name, A, B, C, D. I mean, and they're talking about those are secondary impact craters. And when we look at the moon from a point of view of chronology of impacts, okay, well, you know, the seas, that is, the seas that we see, have very few large impacts on them. That's very telling. That tells us something important. That tells us that the impacts that caused those came near the end of the bombardment area, and nothing great size hit them after they were formed. If so, you would see it. You would see them there. You'd see extra big craters right in the middle of a Maria. And you know, we have some craters in the middle of Maria, all right? There's some over in the Sea of Tranquility and so forth, but we don't see that everywhere we look on the moon. And that means that the seas and those types of things, those came from an impact event that came near the end of the era of bombardment for the moon. Now, there's a late era of bombardment, an early era of bombardment. So we're talking the late era of bombardment is when the Maria were probably made. Mm-hmm. And if you look in the moon image now, you can see down to the lower left there, okay, you can see some large impacts in the middle of a Maria. All right, and that is an example of some objects that came along in the late bombardment era, probably struck the moon, and these are the type of objects I'm talking about. The other Maria that you see on the moon there, the ones where we always say, oh, the man on the moon, okay, when those things hit, nothing much came after them. So they were kind of near the tail end. Now, when we look at the near side of the moon, I think I've talked to you about this. The near side of the moon has all the Maria, the seas. The far side of the moon is just craters. Isn't that odd?
Something to do with gravity, maybe? Between
well,
Earth?
It has to do with what happened at the time of the formation, for sure. And what's interesting is the Earth was still molten, by and large, when the moon was molten. And exactly, and when we looked at the front side and the back side and compare them, we obviously see that there's a huge difference. Now, what does that huge difference mean for us, or to us? It means that when we see the seas, we have to say, well, why did this happen here, but not on the back side? Now, it turns out that the crust on the back side of the moon is thicker. I mean, that's the end result. Okay, that's the end observation.
And how did we get to know this?
It was actually basically from studies, seismic studies on the moon, we could tell that the backside was actually thicker, and the front side is thinner. Okay. Now, those are the factual details. Now, the question is why? And it turns out that when the Earth was still in a molten state, even though it was 240,000 miles, well, actually less, okay, at that time. But even though the moon was still molten or partially molten, and the Earth was partially molten, the infrared energy radiating from the Earth could still keep particles molten that were ejected off the moon in impacts. Now, those particles from the radiation from the Earth, okay, from the infrared radiation, would actually be, in general, would migrate to the far side. And that's because of the fact that these are particles ejected into the atmosphere, into the air. I'm good, into the space around the moon, and then the
You are
radiation
just
pressure.
falling into those flat Earth people, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm trying to find an excuse for why the Earth's really flat.
Yeah.
So these molten particles ejected into the space around the moon would be pushed to the far side of the moon, and then they actually could cool and fall to the moon's surface. And when they did, the long-term effect was that it made that side of the moon thicker. But that said, the near side that we see was thinner. So whenever impacts occurred, especially in the late bombardment era, what do we see? We see vast floodplains of lava, which is what the dark gray maria are that we see. And that's because it's thinner. It was easier for impacts to literally, essentially blow a hole in the moon and cause the interior to go molten and to actually cause an upwelling from inside. The far side, it's a lot harder for that to happen. And there's some pretty big craters in the far side. So that's kind of why our moon looks this way. And then as the tidal lock took place, one of the interesting things is that the near side of the moon and the far side of the moon didn't necessarily have to have them. It didn't necessarily have to be that the moon the moon side of the moon we don't see, far side, near side at one point. That could have been what we always saw, and the Maria might have been on the far side. Okay. However, in fact, gravitationally, that probably would have been the way it started. But because of impacts, perhaps some large impacts, the moon got twisted. And then it fell into the other resonant location, which is with the mass, a larger amount of mass on the far side. The moon is lopsided. The center of gravity of the moon is toward the far side, not toward the near side. So that's an interesting thing about our moon. It's actually not, gravitationally central in terms of its gravity. It's not in the center.
Maybe that's what gives it its weird wobble.
Well, yeah, nutation is a little bit different, but still, it's probably all of those factors are the result of a couple of things. Three things: the sun's pull on it, the Earth's tidal bulges, and the moon's asymmetry. Okay, all of those things do figure into causing various levels and various degrees of these strange motions that the moon does undertake. It's a really interesting body, let me tell you, and we're right next to it, relative.
I find it fascinating.
So I don't know.
I do. It's like I was just saying in the chat earlier. Like no matter how many times I look at this or how long I've been doing this, every time that we get a nice clear night, it's like just as amazing as the first time you see it.
Is it not true? It is just beautiful.
And you see stuff, that's almost brand new to you.
Yeah.
And you're looking at it like, has that always been there? Then you jump back, a couple months, and you look and it's like, yeah, it's always been there. I just never noticed it before.
That's right.
Because we had this crater last night that literally, it looked like it just looked like a crater that had a handle on it. Like an arcing handle, almost like a pot, a pot lid.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, has that always been there? And I jumped back in the streams and checked this morning. I was like, oh, yeah, it has been. Just never noticed. Maybe it's just because of the way the shadows are hitting. Sometimes we're catching the shadows just at the right time. Because if you guys notice that are watching the stream, I've now put the moon condition up on the top, and you'll see it. And it will fluctuate as the night goes on. You'll see it, I think we started out, it was at 69.9% illuminated. Now we're at 70.1, and I think it's just about to go up to 70.2. So those little differences, I mean, that's that lingering Terminator line just moving just the slightest little bit that could change the whole game with the shadows. Just that 1-2, point of percent, it just makes things look absolutely different. And it might just be, looking at it at a different, where 1 month we might see it at 73.5%, and the next month we'll see it at like 73.8%, and it looks absolutely different than it did before.
And you might also notice that around the limb, you might notice that the aspect ratio, that is the projection of the craters, that is how elliptical they look, can change one cycle to the next.
Yep.
And it's slight, it's not a lot, but that is, again, that's the that's one of those features that is a result of the very, very complex celestial mechanics that are at play here between the Earth and the Moon and the Sun and the other planets. And they're all tugging together, and it's truly what's called an N-body problem. N is in Nancy, N-body problem. Trying to solve all the motions really, really hard. So you try to just establish reference frames and say, okay, let's establish the Earth and the Moon as a reference frame, and let's figure out the motion that the Moon should have just due to the Earth. And then you get a calculation for that. You solve an orbit for that. What's left over, the things that don't fit your orbit, must be due to the Sun and the other planets. Mm-hmm. So then you do a dual body problem where you're trying to solve the Sun and the Earth in conjunction with the Moon. You figure that out, and you go through and figure out what's left, what isn't fitting the model. What's left not fitting the model is going to be Jupiter primarily. And then that will, of course, affect your model, and that's something that then you know, for instance, how much the other planets affect the Moon. And this science is it's sort of a iterative process. You go through it, do it again, and then when you do it again and again, you get these answers, and they're valid answers. And people that don't understand science, or people that refuse, worse.
Because that's the easy thing to do.
That's right, and Daryl's right. And nutation. I mentioned nutation. I didn't say libration, but that's true. And Keith, I got to say, okay, you're welcome, Keith. Keith said he thanked me for an answer I gave, I guess. So I wanted to make sure that he knew I saw that. Yeah. So I'm very interested in this, and as I told you guys and probably told people in chat, I want to get out to Arizona. I'm actually going to probably go back to school for part of the time, and I'm going to get a further degree in planetary science. Because I have one in astronomy, and I want more. What can I say? Okay, just a little bit more.
Give me more.
No, you do.
To answer Keith Culpepper's question in the chat, he asked if is the tracking automated or manual. It is automated. Once he gets a good alignment, some nights alignment's better than others. When he can get a really good alignment, you get nights like this where it just stays there and you can't even tell it's moving.
Yeah, this is a good night.
Yeah, and it's those kind of tracking mounts are not cheap.
No. I think I know about that.
But they are so worth it, especially when you want to do this, especially if you're into astrophotography and you want to do stacking of images and stuff like that. I mean, it's almost a must.
Yeah, so, I do. I want to. You want me to explain what stacking is?
Would I dare say that the mount is more important than the actual tube? When it comes down to, because you can stack images with a good 4-inch, 5-inch tube. As long as your tracking's on point, you know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, and let me just define stacking. I'm sure you have 116 people watching, so I mean, somebody doesn't know what we're talking about. Stacking was like cup stacking, that kind of like a drinking game or whatever. I mean, sounds like it. Sometimes it is, sometimes it ain't.
Yummy.
But basically, and this is what I do on a regular basis. Basically, you want to take pictures of an object, so you go out and you image the object with your telescope. I have a telescope inside a dome, and it's on a big steel pier that I had made at an industrial facility. Telescope, all 200 and some odd pounds of it is sitting on top of the pier, so overall I've got about 300 or 400 pounds worth of gear that's over my head all night long when I'm working on these things. Now, that's a stable mount. So yes, a mount is very important. Now, the telescope's ability to guide and follow in alignment, that's actually very important, in fact. And that's actually kind of above the mount, and I'll tell you why. Because there are telescopes that can actually guide and fix on a point and guide once they just know their orientation. They're good. They don't need to know. They don't have to be perfectly level, okay? And they don't need to be perfectly aligned, but if they are aware of that, and this is where I'm going, then the telescopes can actually be relatively easy to set up, I'll say. Right. Now, but if we want to go and and create astrophotos, then you want something that's actually pretty accurate. So mine, I actually just aligned it tonight. I mean, before my clouds rolled in, I actually did another alignment tonight and at higher power, so that I could actually make sure that I got everything in the view that I was looking for. And I'm at that point where it's just beautiful, and I don't think there's any issue right now. So I closed down for the night because the clouds rolled in.
But I do want to say that if you want to see the difference between a regular image and a stacked image, Mark has a Facebook page where he posts some of the ones that he does on his Sky Tour live streams, and you can go there and check it out. I'm pretty sure Amanda can link it or Mark can link it there in the chat for anybody who wants to check it out. And you see a massive difference between the raw image and the stacked image, and it just brings out so much more detail and in some cases so much more color. It's really amazing.
No, let's define what a stacked image is, because I didn't really get to it yet. I guess I should have. My fault. So if we're looking at a faint nebula in the sky, a star-forming region or whatever, it's a cloud of gas and dust, and they're generally red. So you take 4 pictures and you say, "Oh, this is neat," and those 4 pictures help you decide the optimum exposure and sensitivity, ISO setting that the camera's going to be set at. Then what you do is you take 25 of them, one after the other, one after the other. Once you're done with that, you cover the telescope.
While tracking, we should say.
While tracking, of course. Yes, you're right. Very good. And then you cover the telescope, and you do 25 again. Same ISO setting, same sensitivity, and the same exposure. And those are called dark frames. Okay. Then, ideally, you want to shoot something called bias frames and flat frames. Flat frames are for making what's called a flat field, and bias frames are for something else. Now, you can actually do the whole process I'm about to tell you with just the images of the object you're taking and these dark frames. Now, why do you have 25 frames? Well, if your nebula is faint, 25 frames, you can actually imagine it as 25 pictures, and you stack them on top of each other, ding, 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 and you make a thick stack of these pictures. If they're think of them as real pictures. When you actually do this digitally in a program like Deep Sky Stacker, which is a free program, oddly enough.
Freeware.
It is, and it's wonderful. If you do it like that, then you can actually increase the faint nebulous detail, because you're adding signal, that is the data you want to keep, and you're also adding noise. But the dark frames that you also include in your stacking process are used to get rid of some of this noise, and they also get rid of the inconsistencies in the actual imaging chip. If you just take a picture with your camera cap on, and especially at high ISO, very sensitive with a camera like we use, then you'll see that the objects, you'll see what looks like patterning on the screen, but you're not even looking at an object that has any pattern. Mm-hmm. So what's going on? I mean, you're just seeing the intrinsic response of the sensor chip. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you fight. That's what we're fighting. But if you do the dark frames, you get rid of that. Yeah. And that, in other words, gets removed from your final image, and the final image you get still is a little brighter than it should be, but that's what Photoshop is for. And then when you take it in and you do processing, I mean, some of the images that you see in the Sky Tour livestream Facebook companion site are just night and day from what an original frame looked like, right? Mm-hmm. It's really something. Yeah.
And I should mention, if you guys want to learn how, if you have a pretty good camera and you want to learn how to do all this, Mark actually does teach you a lot of the settings and whatnot over on Sky Tour Livestream, which is his YouTube channel, when they do live tours of the skies. So if you wanted to subscribe over there, you can. Definitely a good idea, especially if you want to do this. But he explains it in detail. He explains why sometimes that you need lower exposure rate and higher ISO, and sometimes you need lower ISO and higher exposure rate, for certain objects, and he tells you why.
And over time people get it, So I think that's pretty cool, And so I think it's we're about to kind of reach a revolution in astronomy here. We have the Webb telescope going up, and Daryl's in chat. He's just saying that you see the European Space Observatory's VLT interferometer. Okay, a large stars have been within the realm of what we call resolving. That is, seeing them as the disk that they would appear to be from a distance, but getting actual good data to see that is very, very hard. And the ESO VLT system actually got a direct image of Antares, but Antares is a supergiant. If you put it where the sun is, it would go out past Jupiter.
But still, we should not. I mean, we should applaud the fact that we actually got detail on a star that's how far away?
Antares is quite far.
4 light years, 8 light years, something like that. I think it's 4 light years.
Antares?
Yeah. How far away is it?
Oh, Antares, man. When Antares goes off, Antares is going to end as a supernova,
Well, I know that, but how far away is it from us?
So we better be. It's pretty far, but I'll tell you how far actually in a sec. I'm just gonna.
I mean, take
I do. I'm gonna
x minus y to the second power divided by pi.
No, I got pi wrong. 1 second, I'll figure it out.
3.17592848382.
Or I mean, 159. Yeah. Let's see.
600 light years. That might be right. I don't know. I thought it was closer. Maybe I'm thinking about something else.
Might be thinking about Betelgeuse, which is like 580, I think. But let me just get this here because I'm actually. I still have my. I don't. The thing is, I don't memorize all these things most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Betelgeuse.
Yeah, Betelgeuse, as we used to call it, Betelgeuse. It's Antares is 550 light years.
Yeah.
So
still, I mean, we're seeing detail on something 550 light years away.
Right.
That's which is amazing in its own right.
Yeah, and I can give you an analogy to show you how amazing that is, because if we consider that the nearest star to us is the Alpha Centauri's triple star system, right? A and B, and then C is Proxima, the little red dwarf that's circling both A and B from a distance. And let's say Alpha Centauri A, the main component. It's a star kind of like the sun. Well, that's only 4 light years away. It's the closest other star to us. Well, Proxima is actually the closest, but the closest sun-like star to us is, Alpha Centauri A. Now, if you took an ordinary 25-cent piece, a quarter, and you had it in front of you, and you looked at it, and you said, okay, I'm going to imagine that I'm going to move this quarter as far away from me as I have to, so that it's the same relative size as the disk of Alpha Centauri A. How far would I have to move that quarter? And the distance that you would have to move that quarter from your camera to see it it's the same size that Alpha Centauri A is in the sky, is 750 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine, do we have any telescopes on Earth that can see the face of a quarter?
You know what? That makes
away?
sense, because when we did the math before, when people were talking about why can't we see the flag on the moon and everything else, it was about because of the size of the area. And it's literally like if Paul was in Florida with his telescope, with the telescope you see on the screen now, the 9.25, that would be like him trying to see somebody holding up a quarter on the Empire State Building from Miami.
Yeah.
And that was about relative size. Not exactly, but it was about relative size, of the resolution he would need. So he would need a much, much bigger scope.
Yeah, and really the question when I wrote I don't know if I did it for Huffington Post or if I just wrote it as a post in my Facebook. I can't remember, but I wrote a post about how why we don't see the flags, why we can't see the descent stages of the lunar landers with the Hubble Space Telescope, and it came down to the fact that at the distance that the moon is and at the altitude the Hubble is, which is only in Earth orbit, those details on the moon would correspond to literally something that's on the order of 10 to 10 to 15 times smaller than the best resolution the Hubble has. And so, in other words, in the end, it would turn out that the entire, for instance, I did this math, the entire Apollo 12 landing site from the lunar lander, which I think was called Antares, wasn't it? Wasn't the Apollo 12 lunar module called Antares?
Brain's not thinking. Maybe not.
Okay, no. Well, from where that descent stage was to Cone Crater was around 120 feet, and that distance, which pretty much comprised about 3/4 of the Apollo 12 traversals for that particular landing, that distance corresponded to literally less than 1 pixel on the Hubble camera sensor. That would correspond to 1 pixel.
Yep.
And the best images, I mean, bad images used to be 300 by 200, pixels in size, and that's like 1 pixel. In fact, the details of the items on the moon are under 1 pixel in size on the Hubble sensor.
You know, I think it is. I think it's
that's
just
why
people just don't understand like how big the moon actually is, because we can see all of it from our vantage point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like during a full moon and whatnot. And they just take it for granted like it's just bald, but people don't realize how actually huge the moon is.
If they sit in orbit around a 2,000 mile diameter object, they would understand it. If you actually, you know what I think? They would actually be panicky the whole time, thinking they were going to crash into it. Because without an atmosphere, there's no way to gauge that you're not falling closer to it.
And if you look at the JAXA or the, even the LRO, I mean, if you would put them images together and as a, say, a video, it looks like you're coasting right over the surface when you're, 1,000 miles up. You know what I mean? Well, in the LRO, it's what, a couple hundred miles, 200 or 300 miles up. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely huge.
And I think LRO at one point was, in order to take advantage of imaging the Apollo sites, it was about 30 miles over the sites at one point.
Yeah. And I did a video way back on this channel. I was thinking about redoing it lately, but I did the Apollo 11 site. And I compared the whole area of the Apollo 11, where they went out of the lander, the whole area they investigated, and that entire area can fit between the east and west wing of the White House. Now they're like, and a lot of people, it was basically like, and an eighth of a tenth of a mile or something like that. It wasn't a lot at all. And people were like, well, we can see, from satellites above Earth, we can see, the White House and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, well, we have more powerful cameras on the ones that we have, on Earth. Sending that one up there, you're going to get kind of blurred images, but you can still see it. You can see the tracks from the rover,
Yeah, with LRO you can.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just
you can actually.
It's just amazing.
With the LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, you can actually see the shadow of the American flags at various sites. Okay, for Apollo 15, you can see the shadow. Apollo 12, you can see the shadow. Actually, for Apollo 12, you can see the flag itself. Just because of the angle at which the LRO took the image, you can actually see fuzzy pixels that are not lunar surface, that were actually part of the flag itself. But you actually see the very, very specifically shaped shadow of the flag. Certainly, the angle of the light helps you. If you're doing it at a full moon,
right.
You're not going to see that at that location, because it'll be pretty much a very small shadow there anyway. But yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, I'm a big fan, and to those of you who want to explore the moon further, go to the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter site. Actually, just go to Google and look up LRO Quick Map. That's all one word, Quick Map. And you can literally use your mouse wheel and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in until you have half a meter per pixel represented.
The LRO is the one that does the TIFF images, right? Or no?
What do you mean TIFF images?
The ones that you can like really zoom in.
Well, yeah, LRO's Quick Map actually allows you to zoom into half a meter per pixel resolution. Yeah. In most cases, there's areas of the moon that aren't fully, that haven't been mapped yet. But you got to keep in mind, the LRO is a spacecraft that's about 25 feet around, and it's trying to traverse every area of the moon and get these very high resolution images. You can imagine it's going to take quite a number of years.
Right, actually, and to answer some conspiracy theorists, and I often wondered this myself, but I think I have the answer for them. I'm going to let you go ahead and go with it. Why don't we have clear images of the poles from the moon? Is it just because the LRO is not in a polar orbit, or?
It's that simple. I mean, because the missions to the moon so far have just not taken them over the moon's poles. Also, keep in mind that when we get to the poles, all right, the orbiter may not, or it might have some precession to its orbit, so it's not going to be able to see the same thing every single orbit.
Right.
And LRO, can be maneuvered in its orbit a little bit, and has, but you have a bunch of different vantage points to look at it from. And to orbit anything, you have to orbit in what's called a great circle. You have to orbit around the widest part of it and stay over the widest part of it, no matter which way you're going. Okay?
Which, I should mention, is why they launch rockets as close to the equator as they can.
That's a very good point. Okay? Because otherwise, they would have to make a great circle that is not aligned with our rotation. And thus, they don't have the rotation of the Earth to assist them when they're taking off. The speed is the fastest at the equator. Okay? And so that means that if they take off, they already have 1,100 mile an hour velocity leaving the launch pad.
Yep.
And now they only have to make up 17,000 miles an hour, basically, or 16,000 to achieve an orbit. Now, I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it absolutely is a lot. So, it's an amazing prospect, and we always launch the same way. We don't usually launch in a way that goes counter to our rotation, because then we would have to make up an additional 1,000 miles an hour going the other way.
And for anybody not knowing, in orbit, it's just orbit is a fancy word for falling.
Right.
That's all it's doing. It's matching the speed. It's going, so it's constantly falling back towards Earth, but it's going fast enough where it doesn't actually go into Earth. It's just falling basically around the planet constantly. I guess that's
moving
easy to put it.
Yeah, it's moving at the exact speed horizontally that exactly counters the fall vertically, and thus that makes a circular orbit.
Math for the win. You gotta realize how many smart people, like how many math people it took to get us where we are in space anyway. Just people in rooms crunching numbers like constantly. And you ever see the pictures of the old chalkboards back in NASA days where they had these giant, I'm talking like 3-story chalkboards with all these physics on it, and it's like, holy moly, thank God for computers.
Right. Well, that was the computer. It was the mind. And one of the problems that we have is when you're trying to get into orbit around the Earth. That's one thing. We have what's called an escape velocity. We have an orbital velocity, and there's calculations. You can figure that out. You can see how fast you have to go to be at a certain orbit. Now, interesting thing is, at the 250-mile orbit level that the International Space Station is orbiting at, we have to be traveling 17,500 miles an hour, roughly, to maintain that horizontal motion such that it counteracts the exact fall rate that we would otherwise fall. That is to say, maintain orbit.
I do have a question about the ISS too when you're done, just so we don't go away from that subject.
Okay. Right. And as we get higher up in orbits, you can move slower because the gravitational forces on you pulling back from the Earth are less. All right, if you think about it, that's why there's 0 G. If you're in between the Earth and Moon, it's 0 G, true 0 G. It's not just the roller coaster effect that you're using. You're countering the gravity of the Earth by moving faster than the Earth's negative pull on you, to stay in orbit. Mm-hmm. And so when we look at the fact that you can go higher and higher in your orbit and move slower, you can imagine that there's a certain point where you will go that's at a certain height where you can actually stay over the same spot in the Earth all the time. And that's what we call the geosynchronous satellite zone, and that distance is around 22,000 plus or minus miles. And that means that any satellites that are at that location would be seen in the sky as a little tiny object that seems to drift around a little bit amid the stars which are standing still. So if you have a telescope tracking the stars, like Paul's telescope is tracking the moon right here, okay, then if you look at the objects in the sky, the stars, and you're tracking them perfectly, and you take a long time exposure, you look at the equator for this. Mm-hmm. If you look at that exposure, you might find that one of them is making a little trail, and that's because it's a geosynchronous satellite, and they wobble in their orbit so that you can actually see them moving just a little bit on long exposures. And that's kind of cool because you can actually identify the geosync birds just by taking a photograph of the night sky, but you have to be looking at the equator.
Right.
You know, because they're all perched over the equator.
Well, let me ask you about the ISS. Do you know what went into the decision to actually put the ISS at that spot?
Well,
that orbital spot.
I don't know, but I can speculate.
Like, just speculate on why you think they chose that altitude per se.
I think they chose it, Keith, because that's the altitude the shuttle could reach, and the shuttle basically assembled it. Mm-hmm. And so it would drop off parts, and the shuttle. In fact, the shuttle was. Well,
you said it's what, 250 miles?
Yeah.
So I mean, I know there would be a difference, obviously, but what would be the major concern being at 225 miles compared to 250, or 275 compared to 250?
Well, I think that. Okay, let's take the farther.
Just wanted a solid round number.
No, I don't think so. It's because it's not a solid round number. Okay, it's actually like 253 or something like that miles. But the reason that it's not that if you think of it again, I'm speculating. I don't know if this is correct, but it's probably close. I would hope. Mm-hmm. When you look at when you look at how high the ISS is, if you look at the cost to get an object into orbit at 252 miles versus 256, there isn't a minimal difference. I mean, it costs money to change orbits. I mean, it's really, really, a large amounts of money, because the entire mission, and especially the shuttle missions, were hinged on how high is this going to go, what's it bringing up, what weight are we carrying, how can we minimize weight. We want to cut, the weight cost every way we can. We want to use the most fuel we can without putting the astronauts in danger.
See, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was the fact that, if they bumped it to say, because they have that, I remember reading somewhere that they have a, what was it, like an 80-mile, I forget what the official term for it was, but it was, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it fall zone, because it's constantly being pulled back towards Earth because of gravity no matter what. So sometimes they have to bump the ISS up. And I'm thinking that because they put it up that high, because of the fact that they could leave it go longer before they have to bump. You know what I mean? Like, it gives it that 70-mile fall or whatever it is before they have to bump it back up, and they can, so they only have to send, like, whatever kind of propellant or whatever it is they send up. They don't have to send it as frequently, to constantly adjust that altitude.
I mean, the answer really falls, I'm sure it's within that realm. But the other thing to keep in mind here is that the reasons why the space station needs to be maintained at a certain orbit has to do with solar activity. When the sun is at a high solar activity level, the atmosphere actually absorbs these particles of charged particles from the sun, from the solar wind, and it expands. And there's very few molecules of atmosphere at the space station location. In fact, it's very, very small, maybe a few atoms per centimeter. But on a large object that many orbits, that amounts to drag. And over time, that drag causes it to slow down an imperceptible amount. If you slow down, your orbit drops. You're exchanging energy. And just like an atom, when an atom has a high energy level, the electron is out in the outer shell of the atom. When it goes to a lower energy state, where does it go? Higher? No, it goes lower. So the electron goes lower in the shell, okay? Lower in a lower shell. And that is kind of what the orbits are, right? Mm-hmm. It's a sort of slow motion versus an atom, I guess, if you think of an atom as a, electron cloud or whatever. But never mind that. The fact is, it's all about trading off energy. And if the ISS is orbiting and it's feeling a few atoms per centimeter the whole time it's up there, that amounts to actual calculable drag on the International Space Station. And if the sun is active, then there's more atoms per centimeter, per cubic centimeter than at that point, and that's even more drag. So a quiescent sun where nothing's going on is the best thing for the ISS, because that means that there's not a lot of a drag. There's a known amount of drag. When the sun is active, they have to calculate how much that's going to expand the atmosphere, and they have to recalculate whether the ISS can be all right where it is, or if they have to do something about it. And
I'll tell you what, Keith Culpepper got an interesting question as well.
Yep.
And it's basically, how do you determine how far away from Earth you are? Is it the distance from the edge of space or from the surface?
What do you mean?
Like, how do you, like, when they say the ISS is 250 miles up, is that measured from ground to ISS 250 miles, or is it measured from, say, the stratosphere to, how do they determine that measurement?
It's probably measured to sea level, and it's probably initiated by the ISS. The ISS probably does laser altimetry in the same way that we figured out the height of features on Mars using the Mars Orbital Laser Altimetry, MOLA.
Well, that goes the same for satellites too?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
Because that's actually relatively common technology. So you'd be able to just basically do a ranging from wherever you are. You could range the distance.
Okay.
And certainly the other thing they could do is by using radar and ground stations, which can see the ISS. Right. The ground stations can actually pick it up, and based on the time that the echo returns come back, they can actually calculate exactly how high it is, exactly how fast it's moving, and all these things. So ground stations can actually pick up the ISS and do all that anyway. Right. So that's probably exactly how they do it. If that was how they were doing it. I don't know if they've changed their technology now that the aliens have landed.
So it's just based upon sea level, pretty much.
Well, yeah, I think they have to pick a 0 point basically.
Yeah.
And sea level is a good one, or maybe they adjust for the height of Cape Canaveral or something. But I think it's actually sea level because it's the sea above which the ISS is most of the time.
Right. Except
for when it's passing over Europe and then China. Asia and China is like the biggest landmass that it actually has to go over.
Let me ask you, how amazing was that? I think the guy from Smarter Every Day actually found and did the math and found the exact point in Wyoming where the ISS was going to do a transit during the eclipse, and got it. And he
that
caught
is
it.
Just the coolest thing.
I mean, it was in the middle of some rancher's ranch land, and he asked the guy for permission, and the guy actually gave him permission. And in return, the only thing that the rancher wanted was to put the solar filter on his binoculars that he had. It was like an old rancher, and so they went and they put the solar film on the old man's binoculars, and he let him, sit out there and record the transit. So if you guys get to check it out, check out the YouTube channel Smarter Every Day. You'll see the eclipse and the ISS transit from Wyoming. It was really neat.
That's very cool, yeah.
Yeah, that eclipse, man. I'll tell you what, nobody expected the internet to bog down the way it did that day.
I know, we were supposed to get on together, and it just didn't happen.
I'm telling you, and just trying to get it, like, because we were grabbing the feed from Astronomy Livestream out from Denver, and even then, just trying to get him up and going was just, it was. I mean, all the internet. It seemed like everybody was on their phones, so everybody wanted to try to stream it live. Everybody wanted to be that person, you know, streaming it on Facebook to their friends and stuff, which I understand. You know, it's a most times once in a lifetime thing. You know, we're getting lucky by having another one in 2024, which will actually cross our paths this time. You know,
I know.
So
we're gonna have no excuse not to get there. You know.
Exactly. So I mean, but I mean, the internet, just the United States internet infrastructure just failed, like miserably that day, especially along the belt. You know,
I wonder what the actual ISP traffic, that is, you know, the internet service provider traffic, actually looked like.
I'm sure somebody has that data somewhere, because you know I have pretty fast internet here, and my internet was fine. It was pulling it through, you know, of course, from Paul, Miami, you know, having to run up the way it did, and then of course, you know, from Colorado to Pennsylvania. Boy, you might as well forgot it. Buffering and buffering and buffering and this and that, and then you couldn't get online, and then, you know, things were. I mean, you're talking about not just us. I'm talking about big, you know, television stations couldn't get their stuff to work if they were doing it via, you know, through the internet instead of satellite. You know,
yeah,
it was just absolutely crazy. But we got it done, and Astronomy Livestream did a great job. He streamed it on 4K on his channel. I don't know if you checked that out or not, but I mean,
I did.
Beautiful shot.
I was streaming him. I was streaming you. I was streaming NASA. You know, I was streaming everybody. Me and by the way, at the same time, I was driving all over Connecticut at the same time, trying to find a location, because there were a few of them, and I got disgusted because I could find none. And so I came home thinking I'll never be able to do this. And so I came in here, and it was the eclipse here was at 243, you know, maximized. At 240, I looked up at my portholes in my office, my windows, and I noticed the sun streaming in. I was like, what? And I went outside with my camera, looked up, and I saw the sun free in a little blue area. And I went, oh no! So I ran inside, quickly made a pinhole camera out of a disc which fit over my camera, because I already had a cutout for a filter for a diffraction grating for doing spectra. And I put that over the end with an open hole, and then I made a little pinhole and put that over that. And then I went outside, stopped it down, pointed it up at the sun. Boom! I got the maximum, and took 5 shots at the maximum, and came in.
Yeah, I did too.
Grumbling how, man, I can't believe it. I mean, after all that effort, all I had to do was wait here.
I'll tell you what. You want to know the one thing that pissed me off about the eclipse? All right, and I hate to say it, but it was NASA. NASA just totally pissed me off. Because they have this eclipse running. Okay, fine. You know, you want to talk about it and stuff like that. But I think like PBS was carrying NASA's feed, and, you know, a whole bunch of people were carrying this feed. And the one thing that people want to see when they go to look at eclipse is the damn eclipse. But they would show, and they had cameras everywhere. They had them in Oregon. They had them, you know, Colorado. I mean, they were just going to follow through. And great. Awesome idea. Kudos to NASA. Well, then you go on, and the eclipse starts. Now, granted, it's a long time. You know, it takes an hour, you know, hour and a half for it to come fully across, but still. And they kept flashing back to these two dolts chit-chatting and talking about and it's like, at least the least you could do is keep it in a little box up in the corner or something. You know what I mean? And they did that sometimes, and sometimes they'd be talking in the background, and they have a dual feed from 2 different towns. Cool. But then they would totally take the eclipse off the screen totally, and then you'd have to sit here and listen, you know, to Bob and Fred talk back and forth about the eclipse and this and that, and they would do that for like 20-25 minutes at a time without even showing the eclipse going on, but just talking about it. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah, the eclipse of the century, and you're not even getting to see it.
Yeah, it's just like they kept flashing back to these people. And it's like, okay, yeah, we understand. We can hear them. Why do we have to see them? You know, put the eclipse on the screen. Keep your feed where it's supposed to be, and then let them guys talk in the background. But no, they kept flashing to these people, and then they want to do this person talking live via satellite to this person, and the whole time not showing the actual eclipse. It blew my mind that this is our space agency.
Yeah,
you know, doing this. And I mean, you have amateurs that did it 1,000 times. I mean, just astronomy live stream. You know, just had to. You know, scope, camera, sun, kept it there the entire time. You could have played whatever you want to in the background.
Done.
No big deal. But
That's right.
So NASA really iffed me with the and I'm not sure what SLU did. You know, they usually do the same kind of stupid stuff, and you know, always want to get screen time for everybody. But I don't know. That just kind of really rubbed me the wrong way when it came to NASA's feed.
Yeah, I didn't even look at SLU this time, and I was a member of SLU for many years. You know, I was there from like not quite day one, but almost. And you know, Paul Cox, the guy that is the manager and runs SLU, nice guy. I've talked to him a bunch of times, and so you know, I enjoyed using telescopes in Chile, telescopes in the Canary Islands, and at one point telescopes in Australia. So anytime I came into my office and I needed to take some astronomy imagery, I could actually be assured that I'd have a dark sky somewhere if it was clear. Unfortunately, they chose a place outside of Melbourne. It was a really dark sky site in Australia, but unfortunately, they, you know, it just turned out to be a real bust of a site.
Yeah.
That observatory went belly up in about a year. But now Chile and Teide are still, you know, Chile and Mount Teide in the Canaries are still active. And, you know, they have several telescopes in Chile. They got two, actually, big domes in Chile. I'm sorry, in the Canary Islands at Mount Teide.
What's the telescope they're building over in the UK right now? Is that the VLT or the ELT?
There's a large... Yes.
I think it's the ELT. I think it's an extremely large telescope. It's like 35 meters or something like that.
It's the biggest ground-based telescope. I thought that they were trying to go for that, but somebody else was doing one even bigger, I thought.
Really?
But you know what? Ground-based telescopes are great. We have them. You have them. We're watching one right now. But you look at the screen there. Just imagine how much more clear that would be. We didn't have to worry about the atmosphere.
Exactly.
Every detail we see there is being softened, and you know the Dawes limit, that is the limit that your telescope can really truly resolve, is obviously limited by the atmosphere and the seeing and well, you know, seeing and transparency. Remember the two functions of astronomy. You know.
Well, we're doing a series.
We call it
on the on P&K channel. It's basically called A Closer Look. And the first one we did, we already put one out for Aristarchus, and you get to see what we see through the telescope. You know, some of the best imaging that we get of Aristarchus. And then I take you to the JAXA orbiter, an LRO orbiter, so you can actually see what it looks like without any of the atmospherics going on. And it's just it's like night and day. You know, yes, we get it. It's pretty good. You know, it's really good for you know, the size of the telescope and what Paul does down there, but there is no Earth-based telescope is going to compare, you know, to something in space.
No. I mean, look. If you look at the image right now that Paul's showing, the little fluctuations you see, and I have to say this is what we call good seeing. Mm-hmm. Seeing is a matter of how stable the image is, and transparency is how clear it is. You know, how sharp it appears, basically. Seeing pertains to the stability, like is it a really unstable air masses between you and the object, and transparency is, you know, if it's unstable, that's one thing, but if it's also fairly minimally, you know, covered with hazes and stuff like that, if it's clear, then maybe the transparency is there, but the stability is not. That is the seeing. And you know, every time I was in a observatory program where I was actually studying nearby stars using the parallax of these stars, which of course is, you know, when we go on one side of the Earth's orbit, we take a picture of a star that's relatively close, and we compare its location in the sky to how it looks when we're on the other side of our orbit, and you'll see that it shifts a little bit in the sky, and that shift is the parallax angle, and the parallax angle is easy to see when you hold out your finger at arm's length and you close one eye, that your finger shifts against the background wall as you blink your eye. Is the, you know, if you close your left eye, that means your right eye is open, and that's the right side of the Earth's orbit, and you open your left eye and close the right, and that's the left side of the Earth's orbit. You can see how the stars shift against the background real easily, and that's a real astronomical technique that we use to determine the distances to these stars. And that's good out to a few hundred light years, but it gets less and less accurate to go out further because of the fact that the
check this out. Coming up on the screen, you'll see when he zooms in, and I'll see if I can't put my mouse around this little thing. But this is what we call a shadow anomaly. This thing looks like a literal tube sitting on a crater top. It looks like a cylindrical tube, and I'll put my mouse around it for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about on YouTube. But very interesting area. Once again, we've seen this crater so many times, yet never noticed that nice little cylinder over there, and it's just a trick of light and shadow. Or is it aliens?
Well, for Aliens on the Moon,
it's a spaceship.
For Aliens on the Moon, they showed me stuff like this, and I actually, and that's where I created the lunar soil, and I actually created soil that would compact and do all the same kinds of things that lunar soil did, so I could show them what was going on here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's simply just it's an architecture. See, I thought you were talking about the thing inside the crater, actually.
No, we know what they are.
Because that looks like that could just be a tube that's a peak, has a curved peak or something. But
once again, tricks of light and shadows. I mean, I've seen a YouTube channel that somebody, I forget what it was called, but literally they would douse like the whole moon image, and they would put so much contrast on it, and then they would add all this color, blue and greens, and
I know.
We're looking at these things, and I'm like, and they're looking like, this is a base, this is a thing, these are rows of buildings, and I'm like, wow, no,
Yeah, no, that's the.
As much as I would like them to be that, you have to deduce, and compare, especially different lighting and different phases of the moon, where what's illuminated because of those shadows. It might look that way for, once again, depending on what's illuminated, the next night it might look totally different. Like you have one on screen that's coming up that, it looks like it has 3 balls in the middle of the crater, in a triangle. Now, I'm pretty sure Paul's going to zoom on it because he's inquisitive. We're hoping to find something that we can explain. Well, let me go down your debunk checklist here. Okay, let's say we're watching this feed right now. All right. Yep. And all of a sudden something just comes zooming in on screen and like really fast stops and makes a 90 degree turn and shoots out the other way. Now let's go down Mark's checklist of debunking. What could this have been? So what do we do first to analyze it?
You want me to go down the list with you?
Yeah. What is the first thing you do when you see that you do? Like, say if something came across and stopped and made a 90 degree turn and shot the other way, right in front of our scope. What's the first thing? The first thing I would do is try to determine whether it was something in our atmosphere or whether it was something between us and the moon. Okay, that's the first thing we differ, because the first thing I would do would be shit myself. Now, continue. See, if you shit yourself, you're already making an assumption. Hey. Call me Mr. Assumption. I would love it. I understand what you're saying now. You definitely want to look for a moon shadow. I absolutely want to make sure that it's nothing that, or it's something that isn't, in our atmosphere. And to do that, you basically have to look at it over and over, watch it again, and try to see if it's actually something that has any kind of identifying features. For instance, what could make a 90 degree angle? Well, first of all, the only thing that might be that would be in focus and be of any significant size might be some type of a bird. Mm-hmm. And the question is, what kind of 90 degree angle would it make? Would it make a true 90, or would it be a rounded 90, like a bird that's suddenly changing a true 90 direction? Like a true thing comes zooming in, stops, and then shoots 90 degrees the other way. Okay, well, blazing speeds. That removes satellite. Exactly. That removes satellite from the consideration, and that removes bird. It doesn't necessarily remove bat. So we'd have to figure out,
how far from the telescope could a bat appear like that, for instance, if that's what we saw.
So we would do
and the answer might,
triangulation first to try to find out distance of the object.
Yeah, if you could, but the thing is, with one observation, triangulation doesn't really work. You don't know how far away something is without having a second observation of the same thing.
So
from a different location.
Is the second step possibly finding if anybody else was recording, either near or the moon at the same time?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because that would confirm whether it was closer to the moon or closer to where you are, right?
Right. You want to determine whether it's a local event or a distant event. That's why our UFOTOG systems, when they're trying to look at the possibility that UFOs are invading our space, say, that's why we have them set up in threes. You know, the idea is that they be a mile apart apiece, so that if something is seen by one, but not by any other two, then it's a local event to that one, which means that it's probably or potentially an animal of some kind, or a potential noise, not real. But we can't say that until we actually analyze it to see. It could be a local UFO event, but we would have to see. Now, but if two of these units were to see it, then now we can triangulate and see how far away, see how high it is, see how fast it's moving.
Right.
That's important. So so I would try to. My first thing was I'd try to see if it's something local to us or something far away. And to do that, you need to get any corroborating data that you can find from anywhere else. If you don't have it, then you're left analyzing the dark object itself, because it's going to be a little dark object moving,
right,
and it's not going to be an object that's very well defined, probably. So it's going to be a slog no matter what you do.
So let me ask you this. Okay, you see something come on screen. It stops. It does a 90-degree turn. You analyze it. You see that. Speaking of, here comes an object, guys. 11:14. I'm gonna say 08. No, go 07. 11:14:07. YouTube time. Something just came across. It probably was a bird, but we'll look at it later. Somebody mark that timestamp for me. So okay, yeah, Paul's putting up on the screen. It was a bird. But so something comes in, it stops, it makes a 90-degree turn, and shoots off. Okay, and we analyze it, and we have it confirmed on two scopes. Let's say scopes that are 200 miles apart. Okay, caught it from different perspectives. Okay, you have that now.
Okay,
you have that proof. Yet you still can't explain it. You corroborated all the satellite data. It's obviously not a satellite. You have ruled out animals, because you wouldn't really get that.
Yep.
Any kind of bird with that mileage apart. What do you do then? Now, do you send it to another astronomer or another thing to get another opinion, a secondary opinion?
Well, yeah. See, absolutely, because I don't do any of this stuff in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. It's very important to have second pairs of eyes looking at these things.
And who are those?
So I probably send it to you, because I know you are so totally.
No, I would want like somebody that is. I mean, who is the okay, something that you found, you don't have an answer for it. You know it's something spectacular that we caught. Who is the pair of eyes or the pairs of eyes that you send it to first for analyzation?
I have, for analysis, what I do is I have a number of people in our image analysis unit that within the Mutual UFO Network that I would consult. These are people that are level-headed, people that are all over the country that I know. One is Bruce Maccabee, a friend of mine, and the other one is a woman named Cindy Costello. She's very smart, very knowledgeable. Right. And I've actually, I've tutored her over the years to try and increase her skill set, but she has a very different set of skills, and she sees things that I don't sometimes. So, I would always run these things by all these other folks to have them check it out.
Okay.
First. Then I might actually take it to some of the university professors that I've known and worked with in astronomy.
So what you're saying basically, okay, this happened. So you're saying that this is going to be probably 2 to 3 weeks of analyzation by the time you get it to the people that need to see it, for them to analyze it, maybe even a month, correct?
Yeah, or longer, and people think that that they may accuse people of they're sitting on the truth. No, actually, it's not true.
Well,
okay,
this is the point I want to make.
I'll give you an example. Go ahead.
Well, the point I want to make is this is the problem I see with UFO channels. Okay, now you just explained something. Okay, at minimal would take a month for an object that happens, say, on this stream alone. Okay, for the analyzation to come through for something. Now, how fast do you think that a UFO channel would grab that footage and smack it up on their website and, blurt it out to the world?
Well, we know how fast they would, because they did it.
I know, but analyzing it. So what I'm trying to say is that everybody watching this, if you see a UFO channel, let's say, oh, this footage was just sent to me and it happened 2 days ago, no scientific study was done on what this object could be, and wait till you see these birds. Holy crap. There was just a big bunch of birds going across at 11/17/57.
Okay.
Holy moly. I got to watch that back on YouTube. I just saw it at the corner of my eye because I kind of got my microphone blocking. But yeah, so to anybody watching, if you see it and it says this UFO event just happened 2 days ago, no scientific study was done, no peer review was done, no in-depth review was done. It's just somebody saying, hey, look at this. This was strange. I'm putting it out there. It's UFO. It's aliens. We're all going to die.
Yep.
So just to keep that in mind. Thank you. Now, continue with what you were going to say. Did you see it yet, the birds?
I just saw it. I just saw the birdies. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Actually,
they weren't birds.
What was it?
Yeah, actually, it was a string of particle beam weapon shots that actually were, fired by a UFO, of course.
Dude, you know what's crazy? I have the Secure Team theme song on a button. And every time something comes, like birds come across, I'm gonna start hitting that button. No, I'm not that mean.
That'd actually be really, really funny.
I know, right?
But any press you give them, like you just give them, it's like now people can say, "Oh, what's that?" And they're gonna go look at it.
Speaking of press,
they're gonna click. They're gonna click them and give them money.
After your study of whatever this object was or is, or at what point do you finally say, okay, this needs to go to the press?
Well,
how much of a validation do you need?
I'll give you an example. When you have a new planetary candidate found around a star, literally for the Kepler data, there's anywhere between 6 months and 2 years.
Yeah, but this is different. This is
something.
No,
hang on, I'll tell you.
Okay.
And the reason you have that kind of difference in time has to do, of course, with how long it takes to see the repeat event, and that depends on the planetary year of the object you're trying to see, and maybe that takes a year more or a few days, depending on how close it is. But then you got to corroborate it using a different method. Now, for us, when we see something like that, like you're talking about, we want to corroborate this by using another person to have them look at it.
Right.
And don't tell them anything about what they're seeing. Just get an opinion. What do you see here?
So basically, your information is, hey, watch this clip and tell me what you think. You're not gonna.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't give them you don't give them any lead. There's no lead in. In fact, I just had a case today, which I solved for a woman who is a professional photographer with over 30 years of experience, and she took these images during the eclipse, and they look like lens flares, except the lens flares had little. It was like they looked like little moons. It looked like partially illuminated moons, like crescent moons. Okay, but the angle was going the wrong way. If the sun was illuminating it, it was going the wrong way, and she couldn't understand what that was. And I wrote it back and I said, after I analyzed it, I realized, okay, you were close to the path of totality, weren't you? And you were actually seeing the eclipse itself in these several different ghost images. That's why they actually look like planets to you. You're actually seeing the eclipse. And she says, oh, yeah, that's true. We had 98% coverage. I go, well, there you go. Okay, you were actually seeing the eclipse. So in some cases, right away what things probably are, but you have to get the person who looked at these, the person who shot these, the person who filmed them, you get their input first and let them solve it for you by telling you or confirming your suspicions,
Right.
So if we had something out there that was actually really interesting, crossing the P&K space imaging live stream, then we would watch it, give it to somebody else if I couldn't figure it out. And then if they couldn't figure it out, we give it to someone else. Then we would take it to some astronomers, some physicists, and people I know and have worked with to try and see if they have a different approach, a different idea. And usually someone who doesn't have anything to do with astronomy might give you the best possible investigative path.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're say you have a physicist, you go to a physicist and you see this optical effect, or you see this thing on your stream where the thing goes 90 degrees. If something like that happened, and we couldn't explain it, we couldn't figure out if it was a bird, and we didn't know what it was, then we would take it to like one of these physics guys to have him to look at it, someone that doesn't have anything to do with astronomy,
right,
just to get an idea what they think they're seeing here. And sometimes
would that be before or after you would approach, say, like a visual effects person to test for CGI influence or anything?
Well, see, I can test for that, but
to
yeah,
rule it out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if someone were to ask, I would have had to have ruled it out, and I can rule it out fairly quickly by doing a frame-by-frame analysis of the object. Now, the objects themselves, whatever they are, might lend themselves and give themselves away, as they usually do, as CG. But if they don't give themselves away as CG, then I would take it to that next level and go to someone else. Now, visual effects artists, they're not going to be, they're probably not going to be able to tell you what it is. They're going to probably say, "Oh, that looks like that could be CG. Sure, why not?"
Yeah, but there are forensic, people that can.
Well, that's my point. You got to go to a forensic guy who can actually disassemble it. For instance, if you have an image that has something in it and it looks odd, the first thing you want to do is check to see if it was fake. And I do that using several techniques. I besides direct inspection, I have another technique I use that's called error level analysis, and I can actually take a look at an image that comes to me, and I can detect in just a couple of minutes whether it's been cut and pasted or whether it's fake in any way. Mm-hmm. I can detect that, and it's not foolproof, but when it works, it works. Okay, you can get a false negative. Okay, so you might not be able to determine that it was faked, but if you can determine that it was faked, then it's likely to be always. It's very likely always. Well, how do you say this? It's usually absolutely true that it's been faked. So they don't really give false positives.
Well, let's get back to the main question: is what is the point, or when is the point that you say, okay, this has to be released to the media, the actual real media?
Well, obviously that's when you get consensus. I guess I could have said that 5 minutes ago, but if you get consensus between everybody you're talking to, then yeah, you would then release it. And I can't help but think that you're thinking, well, I got something that I didn't show you yet, but I'm going to show it to you, and you're going to analyze it.
No. I'm just saying. I'm just hypothetical. I often wonder what, once again, lack of a better term, is what the chain of command would be for it. I think if we did ever catch anything like that, obviously you're going to be number one on the list to send it to. I believe Greg down in New Zealand would be another one. Daza that we had on here before that you talked with. Astronomy Live from Florida, not Astronomy Live Stream, but Astronomy Live, because he is a very good astronomer. And also Astronomy Live Stream. They would be the four, I would send it to. And say, guy, I wouldn't, once again, just like you, I wouldn't say, hey, I would just say, hey, check this out. I think we caught something. See what you think, and then try my best to give any information to say I would have that would be able to help figure it out, You know what I mean? So any help that I could give with any lenses that were used, or what scope it was, or the exact location of it, and all that kind of stuff. And I would expect it to take a while, because once again, we love looking at the moon, but we're not debunkers, guys. That has to be the biggest point. If we see something that we can't explain, we're gonna try our hardest to explain it. Because we owe it to anyone that follows us. But we're not going to go out of our way to dismiss it if we think there's some validity to it. Oh, absolutely, that's correct. And it's sad to say that I've been labeled a debunker by I don't know, hundreds of people over the years, and we're all NASA shills. Yeah, right. And I'm not a debunker in any way. I'm an explainer. I mean, I explain when I understand something, just like this woman that had these objects on her imagery that she took. She thought these were interesting, and she thought with all the Nibiru stuff that maybe she caught something odd. I explained to her why they couldn't really be planets. I explained to her why the light was wrong if they were planets, or were to be planets. Oh, man. And then I explained to her, well, she was being very honest. I really respected her for it. I gotta tell you, she didn't know. I gotta tell you, there was this, I don't know what channel. It was a channel I was watching. I don't know, but it was crazy. And this guy, it's a Nibiru channel, obviously. And sometimes I watch him to get a good laugh, just to see the ridiculousness of it. And this guy was claiming, that this woman he had on was had a doctorate in physics, And they're talking about Nibiru, and this physicist, quote unquote, I'm not really sure what her credentials are. Probably had an undergraduate degree in physics and went on to get a master's in pharmacy. Yeah, she was like from Africa or something like that. So, I mean, she sounded like she knew what she was talking about. But once they got into the Nibiru, she was saying that how Nibiru was near, and how scientists and everything are hiding the truth. And I'm looking at this, I'm going, I should actually watch this video with Mark and let him just tear this shit apart. Like, being that because you're not a physicist. But no, I'm thinking, me being not anything, was listening to this going, that's not right. How is she coming to that conclusion? Like, I would almost have to call into question, the quote-unquote doctor part of, the physicist. I'm like, this can't, I almost have to send you a link for you to believe it. But then again, I got to take it back and look, in context, that this is the same, channel that I got a good chuckle out of, saying that, it wasn't the moon that went in front of the sun during the eclipse. Yeah, because they couldn't see it beforehand. And I'm like, dude, it's a freaking new moon. Like, what? You know what I mean? It's absolutely insane. And then he has this physicist on backing up his claims, like, almost, sniffing his undies, like confirming his, these ridiculous things. And it's like, we didn't see the moon beforehand. We should have saw a dark spot. And it moved in front of the, just, if you listen to it, you just get a good laugh. You almost pee yourself. Like, wondering what these people are talking about. Neil deGrasse Tyson and I both have the same feeling about this. And that is that, and I haven't talked to him about this, obviously, but we are hopefully going to be able to do this at some point, either through you or through, other efforts, I hope, but who knows. But I think we're going to have more luck in the winter time with a lot of the guests that, once summer's over, it brings a lot of people back, to their normal kind of routines. A lot of people are traveling during the summer and stuff. Yeah. I'm still trying for Amy Friday and Saturday night, guys, by the way. Cool. I did shoot her an email again. We're going to try to get it hooked up finally. But yeah, her and Fraser are still on the list. And then, of course, Tom Savini is going to come on sometime, I believe, in October. Around Halloween? Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be cool. Yeah. Yeah, I use some Savini techniques lately to do some visual effects stuff for a movie. So I think it's pretty cool. Now, as far as I was telling you before, Neil deGrasse Tyson has the same attitude that I do on this, and that about people with Nibiru and all that. I feel like the educational system in this country has failed people, because if they come out of school thinking that there is a possibility that there could be a large hidden planet in our solar system that could go unnoticed, it's failed. But Mark, I really don't think kids are coming out of school thinking that. I think they're learning it on the internet afterward.
but their education that they got didn't make them have the didn't give them the ability to discern the difference.
I could almost blame a school for maybe not giving the kids or teaching the kids ability how to research and how to contrast and compare.
That's kind of exactly what I said.
But I don't think they're coming out of school believing the Earth is flat or that there's a planet.
No, but they came out of school being susceptible to it because their training, what they learned in school, wasn't good enough to make them have the ability to be discerning.
So it's more critical thinking, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is. And then that's the thing that I've been fighting. I mean, you can imagine that over the years I've encountered some people that are absolutely very very intelligent people with absolutely the wrong notions about how the world works. Okay, I've talked to some very very smart people. Okay, one person who's a very very smart guy. Okay, he runs the Creation Museum and believes that the Earth is 5,000 years old.
Oh my!
The man is incredibly smart. Okay, he even debated Bill Nye on stage in front of the.
Are you talking about what's his name? The guy that was saying that humans and dinosaurs walked together.
Yes.
5,000 years ago. What's his name? Ken Ham.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, Ham's belief set is based all on his assumptions that he makes. He's a very intelligent guy. Mm-hmm. So I listened to this guy talk, and I'm thinking, how could he take the factual data that he sees and make it not what it is? For instance, give a simple example, and this is something I wanted to ask him, and I didn't. I didn't ask him this, and I'm going to, because I'll be conversing with this guy. I want to know, at the Mid-Atlantic Spreading Ridge, how there's a record of all the geomagnetic reversals that we've gone through in the last several million years, and they show up in the strata on the ocean floor, because when that strata is being exuded as a molten magma, it comes to the surface and it's lava and it's flowing on the ocean floor. As it crystallizes and it cools rapidly, those crystals are aligned in a particular direction based on the magnetic field, and we see that it's changed, and we see that our poles have undergone geomagnetic reversal. That's the thing that became pole shift. Again, because people were unable to discern the difference with what the cores on the ocean floor were showing us and what was actually happening. Pole shift takes thousands of years to occur, and it really does happen. So, but is it gonna knock all the planes out of the sky? No. Is it gonna make the birds and all kinds of creatures die? No. It's happened hundreds of times in the past. How do we know? Because it's in the record. We see it in the rock record. and you can see, based on the age of these rocks, how many times. You can go back about 1.6 million years and see that the last geomagnetic reversal was actually somewhere around 650,000 years ago or so. Mm. And we're sort of due for one. But it's like, it doesn't happen overnight, as some of these people would have you believe. And that's, again, where the educational system has failed us. They didn't understand, they didn't know enough to say, well, how long does pole shift take? Right. They just made a rudimentary look at the data, watched a fanatical YouTube video, and then just said, okay, that's it. We're all going to die.
That's and it's like, goes.
And that's how it goes. But, again, just geomagnetic reversal. You look at the rock strata, it tells you when it happened. It shows you how it happens. And you actually see that the line is not just one sharp line. Okay, it happened on this Thursday 12 million years ago. Bam! And it changed overnight. Everybody fell off the earth. I mean, that's not how it is. But for people to actually think that it can happen that way shows how little they listened in earth science class.
Yeah.
And I think that, what is that? Was that subliminal advertising? I saw P&K show up really quickly on the screen there.
I think I might have clicked the thing accidentally.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It was subliminal advertising. You can have it say, buy popcorn. Well, anyway,
I don't think it's subliminal when it's that big. That's the big one there. You'll see it pop up on YouTube.
But it was subliminal. It was wow. It's subliminal.
Yeah, I think I accidentally clicked it when I was clicking.
That's okay. It was funny. No, but so when we look at geomagnetic reversal anyway, that again is real. But you know what? Obviously, we've gone through it so many times before, and we survived. The reason is because it's a slow process. Anything that's a slow process on the Earth, we can survive, like tectonic plate shifting. Okay, we're not going to get subducted down into the Pacific plate and all die in a searing, burning pain because we're going to get sucked down into the mantle. That's not how it happens. It's very, very slowly moving, and now that's not going to happen. So, but people who look at it the other way and just look at the record, the fossil record, and they look at the record and see these, they see these areas where the poles shifted. They make assumptions, and these preconceived notions will kill them. It's going to kill them. They don't understand how long things take. The first thing I'd say if I saw this actually, let me say it this way. The first thing I said when I saw these geomagnetic reversal crystal structures was, what's the timing on these? How long does it take? And you know what? It didn't take long to figure out that it takes several thousand years for the whole process to take place.
Right.
Nothing on Earth happens immediately. Okay? Even an asteroid hit would, believe it or not, take hours to occur.
Right.
And we would have hours to see the growing incandescent cloud over the horizon of the molten material that's being blown off the Earth. It would be rising in the atmosphere and into space for hours and days and weeks, and then it'd come down.
The YouTube channels would be blowing it up like crazy. We're all gonna die. Give me ad money.
Well, in that case, they might be right. But if it was an asteroid, but yeah.
Well, speaking of asteroids, there's an asteroid passing really close soon, isn't there? Like between the Earth and the Moon.
I think that there is one, yeah, and I'm trying to remember the name because did it already happen actually?
I think it's beginning of September sometime, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But you know exactly what we're gonna hear when that gets close.
Oh, it's the end. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna hear. Well, people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway,
I think you're talking about the asteroid Florence. It's basically.
Yeah, it's supposed to come between Earth and the Moon, and it's actually a pretty big one, relative to size. But it's something like only 50 or 60,000 miles away. Something like that.
Yeah, it's 1980. Oh. It's hang on a sec. It's asteroid 1981. I'm trying to get the name here. 1981. Was it something like that? ET3. Called Florence. And it's going to name for Florence Nightingale.
Anyway, but I know you're going to be able to see it by telescope, and that is where that program written by Astronomy Live would come in so much handy to actually track that thing as it passes.
I know it. I really can't wait to to be able to talk to him and because I actually want to test his software in my on the scope here.
That I think it would be impressive, and I think then either through, I'm not sure how he's going to copyright it or whatever, but I think that he would allow people, if not himself, to actually tinker it to make it work with Celestron equipment.
Yeah, but it works with Mead now, doesn't it?
Yeah, he did it for the Mead software.
Yeah.
But I think we're done with the big scope for now because the big scope is being blocked by a building, but he did have cables long enough that he's extending the wide field out, so he moved the scope out a little bit just so we can continue with the wide field for a little bit yet.
Okay.
So everybody knows. So I think we might be done with the big scope for the night, unless I don't know, Paul gets antsy down there, so maybe he'll decide to kick it out past the building a little bit too. I'm not sure.
Well, so he's using the the 80 millimeter.
Yeah,
refractor.
The 80 millimeter refractor is the one that he uses for the wide field, and then he does have a smaller one too that we can get the whole moon. I don't believe he likes using that one because you can't really see much. I mean, obviously you can see the craters in the Terminator line, and it's one that he does use on full moon sometimes. But
yeah,
you know. But this is the furthest out this one goes. You can't zoom out anymore with this one. So.
Okay.
Sweet. Actually, I should do chat outs to everybody in the chat because there's people hanging out that have been with us pretty much the whole night. So let me see who's active here. So if you want shouted out, make sure you're saying something in the chat that's not stupid. You know, don't say something stupid just to get on the chat. But hi is fine. Hello. Yeah. And I'll do that in about a minute or so because I'm pretty sure we're going to be wrapping up not too long. But once again this weekend I have the email out to Amy Title from Vintage Space. Hopefully she'll join us this weekend. I'm not sure what's on your agenda, but I would like to have you on with her. Only because I know you would probably have some pretty good questions for you about the Apollo stuff.
Sure.
She is probably the single best person to answer any questions when it comes to anything Apollo. I'm talking from launch to finish. I mean, she is a wealth of knowledge.
I think that's great. I mean, I think Amy's worked on some of the NASA's Unexplained Files episodes with me, and we worked sort of separately together, so to speak.
She also did Aliens on the Moon, too, I believe.
Oh, yeah, she did Aliens on the Moon, too, yeah.
Yep.
And I bet you she regrets it as much as I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they railed. And that I don't mind telling you folks. I mean, I got railroaded. I thought I was doing a good thing, but it just did not work out. They actually tried to, take what I said and turn it into something I didn't say. And boy, that really.
I know, and the whole episode was like, coming up, we take it to a something photo analysis expert, and he lets us know. And it was like all episode, and they gave you like 4 sentences.
Yeah. Yeah, I said, and people have heard me say this before, but I'll say it again one last time. People said, or they would say, what do you think of this? And I'd say, well, that looks rather interesting, but it's I can tell you that it's actually a natural formation, and here's why. And what went out over the air, what they edited was, wow, that looks rather interesting. Wait, where's the rest of my sentence?
It's kind of like how they do with movies.
They'll
say a movie will come out and it'll be like the reviewer actually said like this is an amazing piece of shit, you know what I mean? And they'll quote the guy saying Rolling Stone says it's amazing. They don't put the other 3 words in it, you know what I mean? And they're allowed to do it because they're quoting the actual person, but it's all about context.
That's right. It's all about context, and they would often say that, and that's why when I was approached by the Discovery Channel for NASA's Unexplained Files, and by the other, I think it's Learning Channel or something, Science Channel for What on Earth. I said, look, I have sort of had bad experience with people trying to tell me what to say, and then I say it my way, and then it gets all cut apart.
Yeah.
And they promised me that anything I said would not be taken out of context, and that they were not trying to get a certain argument one way or the other. They were trying to be objective. And I said, all right, I'll give you a shot.
Did you get it right?
And yes, as a matter of fact.
Nice.
Not as a part of a contract, but just in writing that my opinions would expressly be my opinions, and that I was not expected to follow any particular story path, and that I could object and offer counterpoints, etc. And that's precisely what I did. And as it turns out, the teams from NASA's Unexplained Files and What on Earth have been absolutely, hands down, honorable. I've been doing NASA's Unexplained Files for many years now, and What on Earth for several years now. And I can tell you,
you're doing something right if they keep asking to come back. You know,
yeah,
so
I mean,
they obviously
I'm
like
not,
your input.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, the other night when we were doing this, again, it was 15 hours of straight filming, but um, he would ask me certain things and say he says they'd say this way. Okay, the director said this. He goes, "Do you feel comfortable talking about this? This event as having been caused by this? From what you're saying. I mean, do you feel comfortable about that, or would you like to phrase that in your own words?" And I'd say, "Well, I think I can say it in my own words, and you let me know what you think." Okay, great. And then they would roll the camera, and then I would say it in my own way, and he would just give me the thumbs up and say, "Brilliant. That's perfect." I mean, brilliant, by the way, is a word that the British say anyway. They just say it. It's that's their way of saying, "Okay, good." Okay, it's always the word brilliant. I mean, it's makes you sound better than you are, kind of a thing. But in the end, I felt that they handled me as always very, very fairly. And I can tell you this: I'm not going to be I'm not going to compromise my science for anybody. And you're not going to get me to say something that isn't true just because you're going to say, "Give me a paycheck" or whatever. I won't do it. And they know that, and I've never had to. They've never asked me to, and they've never made it that way. They've never made it sound like I've said something different.
Good.
And that's the way. That's the way that stuff should be. That's the way that should happen. And I wish that they all did that. When we look at the press now and how the press is, it's like you don't know what's true. You don't know if it's a lie or if it's real. You don't know. When you look at YouTube, it's like, jeez, man, it's like a crapshoot. You don't know what's real out there. I just know that the Bureau is not about to collide with the Earth, and
well, that's why I appreciate what Daza does so much, is because if these people want to make these Nibiru videos or flat Earth videos, fine, let them make them, but don't sit there and claim that there's an apocalypse coming, and stuff like that. That's why I appreciate what Daz does, because he'll take the fear out of it, and get people to actually question what they're hearing, to the point where these people might still believe in a Nibiru. Okay, there might be one out there, but at least they know it's not coming for them, and it's not going to bash into planet Earth in the next, on September 23rd or whatever they're claiming it is now.
Yeah. Has anybody ever noticed that it's always like, when the fall approaches, it's always the Earth's going to be destroyed in September. Yeah. Okay.
And by the way, back to the next September. And then
and by the way, in November we're gonna have 15 days of darkness. Right? How about that fun one? Okay, it's like,
yeah, I heard that too. Like somebody was saying, 15 days of darkness by 15 days of light, and I'm like, or was it light first? And I was like, well, if it's light first, then we're screwed.
Actually, well, I said yes, we're gonna have 15 days of darkness, but it's gonna be interspersed by 12 hours of light in between each day. Yeah. Oh, it'll be 15 days worth of light, or 12 hours of light followed by 12 hours of dark. Right. Yes, you're absolutely right. We're gonna have 15 days of darkness.
Oh my! And the cool thing about this is, with our streaming schedule, is now that we're heading into fall and then eventually into winter, we'll be able to. I mean, we'll be doing live stream starting at 6 p.m. some nights. And on good nights, we'll be going from 6 p.m. to midnight, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. On the good weekends. But let me run down the list of people in the chat just to give a shout out.
About 15 people or so, right?
Yeah, so we got Brian, and Dapple's back again. Once again, Amanda's with us, Danny Fan, and Genghis once again.
Genghis Khan.
Back. Harvey Dent. I haven't seen him here before, but I did see him commenting in the chat box. So welcome.
By the way, I just want to say I want to welcome Genghis Khan here. It's not often that we have, conquesting, terrorizing people here from ancient. The ancient times.
Well, but what do you think Harvey Dent is?
Well,
Two-Face.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. All right, and then we got
it's Marvel.
Jeff Saul, welcome, and Mr. Schultz.
Boom. Hey.
And Mr. Spiritus. And man, I hope I don't mess this up. Requino
Costa.
Requino, okay, and of course Mark is with us live here.
Ooh, what?
And,
Where?
Super Grover and Weird Guy. That's who I have as active participants. If anybody else wants one, get in there now, because it's probably the last one.
You missed Jeff Koski.
I didn't see Jeff. Jeff Koski wasn't on mine till now. So hello, Jeff Koski.
Oh, no, somebody else is
Daryl.
Daryl's back.
Hello, Daryl. Let me see. I'm just going up and down. You know, for 100 and some odd people watching, there's not really many active chatters. It's just kind of surprising.
Well, you know, people want it
right.
and they don't want to participate, you know?
Yeah, some people just want to kick back, watch the moon, and listen.
Hey,
no
you know what?
problem. You're
you
just
want to hear
welcome.
your name? Just pop into the chat and just say hi, and Keith will just say your name. Yeah, nothing like putting you on the spot.
Okay.
See, we got some Joe Malone in the moon. Look at that.
Who changed their name to Norma Stitz? Come on now. Oh boy. Let's see. Anybody else pop up? Harvard? No, these all look the same. Okay. So that is that. Let me see what Paul's telling me here because he's messaging me as we speak. Building. Okay, so so we're gonna wrap it up. You know, I'm gonna wrap it at midnight. He's saying 20 to 30, but I'm gonna wrap it at midnight because, of course, I got to get up at 5 a.m. So we'll do it that way. So we'll wrap at midnight.
8 minutes. Get your shit together.
Yeah. I mean, it's not
John
exactly
Connolly
at midnight.
just joined us.
Hello, John Connolly.
Yeah.
And LER from the Bronx. What's up?
Right. What's up?
Yeah, you know, I'm almost better looking at the
Sergio.
actual chat because the participant list isn't accurate at all. I'm seeing a whole bunch of names that weren't even on the participant list.
Well, it keeps coming and going. I'm watching the participant list, and
Well,
it's
you know
keep
what?
coming and going.
I'm just going to watch the actual chat, and if anybody pops up that I haven't said, I'm just going to say it. How about that?
That's okay. I mean, I think since I said you should come in and Brian, you should come in and Keith will mention your name. We've had 3 people show up. Look, Mira Schultz is here now. See?
Yeah. And once again, welcome to everybody. This is what we do. Most of the times we play music. Sometimes we have on guest. We have Mark. We have Mark D'Antonio with us right now from NASA's Unexplained Files and One on Earth, and all kinds of other stuff. You got FX models. You got your credential list is kind of ridiculous at this point, but. Yes, Mark D'Antonio. Check out his Sky Tour live stream if you want to know how to take some astrophotography and want to learn about space and want to travel the stars and look at stuff other than the planets like myself and Paul do here on P&K. Definitely go over and subscribe to Sky Tour live stream at Mark D'Antonio. He is in the chat. I believe he can post a link, or you can just click on his name and hit go to channel, and you can get it that way.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I welcome everybody.
And I believe our other guy, Bill New York Skywatcher, is also live right now. Or he was live. I shouldn't say he's live right now, but I believe he still is. And he is doing, he is the guy for the All Sky Cam. Really high quality. Does amazing work when it comes to meteors and meteor showers.
That's right.
Definitely got to check that out.
He does.
And of course, if you want to see all 3 at once, we're getting it up and running. You know, we're still getting the kinks out of it, but astroimaginglive.com is where you can see us here at P&K and Sky Tour live stream with Mark, and of course Bill New York Skywatcher, all 3 at the same place, and hopefully we'll be putting a new chat box up there so you can watch all 3 at once if you wanted to when we're on at the same time.
Hey, I want to welcome Jude, who just joined us. I think Jude Talaba, who is actually runs my Colorado division of FX Models Planetary Replicas out in Arvada, Colorado.
Very good.
Just joined us. I think that, if I may, she just does a wonderful job out there, and we have very talented artists who create gigantic planets for buildings all over the country.
I've seen the work. Amazing.
Thanks, man. Thanks. And we have new offerings. We offer smaller models of planets now that you can put on a desktop, a tabletop, lighted, of course, and we're offering framed 3D printed from the actual data, pieces of the surface of Pluto, the Moon, Mars, and you could actually request a place or a spot on Pluto or Mars or the Moon, and if it's within the data range that we have, we'll actually make it for you special, make it just for you.
Speaking of.
I can't do Pythagoras. It's above.
No.
I tried that. Clavius, yeah. Clavius was too close to the 60-degree cutoff. On the Moon, we can go to anywhere below plus 60 and above minus 60.
Son of
and I know, and Clavius is right there around that close to minus 59 or so.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's
and
close.
See, because what people don't know.
Wait, can you do ones around the backside too? Do you have that info?
I think we do. Actually, I've got to look and see.
Would you ever be able to get me Jackson, maybe?
Oh, well, what's its latitude, longitude?
It's like right around the equator.
Well, I'm sure I could do it then.
Nice.
The backside, I should be able to do that. I think I have the backside as well.
Nice.
It's very cool. Jackson, huh?
Yeah. Tycho's twin.
All right. Okay. Well, if I can get at it, I will print it up tomorrow. Actually, for you.
Not a problem.
Now,
if you have time, I mean, don't go out of your way to do it.
Well, okay. Here's what people don't know about you. Okay.
Oh boy.
People don't realize that Keith is actually very generous and very giving of himself. And
I was young. I needed the money. What are you talking about?
No, I don't mean that part of your life.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to be nice about you, nice to you here.
Oh, okay.
So my feeling is that Keith is part of the reason that I'm actually streaming now, folks. I think that it was very important to get into the community, and I didn't really quite know how to get back into the community. I've been doing instructions in astronomy, teaching at conferences, and talking at conferences all over the country. And I've actually been booked into a conference overseas next year in August. I got to go, and so I'm actually, was wondering how to get back into it even more. And then Keith comes along. I watch P&K Space Imaging. Keith talks to me, and basically he and Bill, New York Skywatcher, along with Paul, convinced me to start doing these streams. I've always wanted to do what I'm doing. And so I had the observatory instrument. I said, hey, you know what? If I'm getting enjoyment out of this, maybe others will too. And you know what? It's turned out to be true. So just so everybody understands, we're all in this together. And so I'm doing this because of Keith, Paul, and Bill. So I will never turn my back on them.
we wouldn't even know one another if it wasn't for Bill.
True, but I wouldn't be streaming if it wasn't for you. Okay, you kind of talked me into it, whether you knew it or not. And Bill made it happen with his efforts trying to get me equipment. The man is very generous, just like you. He's willing to go the extra mile. In fact, he's coming out here next Wednesday to troubleshoot my streaming system because I'm getting that weird echo with voices, and he wants to come out and try it. So we'll probably and Amanda is in chat, so she'll know. We'll have Amanda come on, and or you, Keith, and we're gonna try and troubleshoot the echoes that we get in the chat sometimes.
Once again, I want to say hi to Joe Malone as well. I did post a video of his a while back with that satellite capture. It was just amazing.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? I saw it, Joe.
Yeah, glad to see you around. And
it's Joe Malone. He's on the moon though, so it's a long distance.
It used to be just Joe Malone. I'm not sure when he added on the moon, but hey, whatever works. And he's doing stuff as well. And that's the best thing about actually doing this, is seeing how many moon streamers have now popped up. Because you got to figure, in the beginning, it was Bill Bryson, and then of course you had Dark Skywatcher there that was doing it for a while. I'm not sure if he's doing it anymore, but and that was pretty much it. And then we came along, and at right about the same time, Take Back Space came. Chris over at Take Back Space, doing a fabulous job. And then now, I mean, you get hooked up with so many people, and so many more people are starting to do it. And people are like, well, don't you consider that like competition and stuff like that? I'm like, no. I said our whole point of doing this is to catch anomalies, to see stuff, to discover how space and our solar system work. And we've always said this, and we will continue to say this, and we said this from the very beginning, the more eyes, the better. So,
absolutely true.
Yes, we take super chat donations and stuff just to help offset some costs and whatnot, but your eyes are the most important thing to this channel.
Yeah,
because we can't catch it all.
Yeah, and Keith's not telling you have to donate at all. In fact, it's actually, if you can, you can. If you can't, that's okay.
Exactly. You're
still here.
Your eyes are your best donation.
Yeah.
Because how many times have we caught stuff?
Send your eyes.
Yeah. I mean, we've caught.
Scoops,
Prowl, the guy, I'm not sure if he's in here tonight. I know he was last night. But, he catches, that dude has an eye of an eagle. I mean, he sees stuff that, I I don't even see when I go back to look at it until I really zoom. You know, I don't know how he does it, but he catches all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like those eyes like that for everybody watching. You never know if you're going to be the one person that sees something absolutely insane, and marks that timestamp and says, hey, check this out. Something was going on, because I think we're doing this to see if we can catch anything that we can't explain. We want to catch something we can't explain. Now, unfortunately, everything that we caught so far, we can. There's corroborative data that we can back up. We can do satellite stuff, and we can pretty much tell if it's a bird. Yeah. But the more eyes, the better, and that's that's the driving force behind what we do. And I know what Bill does, and Mark, you're more on the scientific side. But once again, you teaching people what's out there in space and in the sky might help them to identify something that shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? When they know the stuff that should. Yeah. So, here we are, 2017.
Yeah.
But yeah. So thanks everybody for that comes on and watches. The mods, you guys are great, and I know you guys are moderating like 3 channels, like a bunch of hawks. But if you weren't good at what you did, you wouldn't be doing 3 channels of stuff.
Yeah. No, I absolutely appreciate the way they jump over on my channel and help out like crazy. I mean, that's wonderful. Amanda actually is a primary mod on my side, because she just is amazing. She does a great job. Yeah. And all the other folks that do it, the other mods out there, Daryl's great, David Schmidt, and then you've got a whole bunch of other folks out there that have been doing this. Heidi does stuff for you and stuff, and me. So it's like a lot of people just come out to just make sure that we have smooth sailing when we do this, and it's like, how do you you can't pay for that, for crying out loud. You can't pay for that kind of loyalty,
Yeah, that's what I was saying last year.
Totally
I'm going to have to write
that.
a lot of Christmas cards. You know what I mean? And we talked about doing T-shirts and stuff, and if we can afford it, I would love to send T-shirts to all the mods. I would love it.
Oh, I think that'd be great.
Just as a kind of a thank you.
Hey, you know what I was thinking? What if we were to get T-shirts that were actually had all of our streams on them listed?
It's possible.
And do it as a group thing rather than one or the other. I mean, we could do it one or the other, but wouldn't that be cool if we just had T-shirts to give out for wherever we went, to whatever conference, give out T-shirts that had all of our streams on it. Yeah. So when I go, if I was going to Devil's Tower, wouldn't it be great if I had 50 T-shirts to give out with all of our, P&K Space Imaging, Build New York Skywatchers, Sky Tour live stream.
Well, I always said I never wanted to be one of those channels that are like trying to like toss tchotchkes at people. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, get this key ring or get this bracelet or, Yeah, well, but when you come down to it, it's like everybody's asking like about T-shirts, and we're like, well, okay, we can do T-shirts. We're not going to do like 50 different kinds of T-shirts. We're going to do like 1 or 2. But
it's not a tchotchke thing at all.
And we're gonna put like funny sayings on them. I think the first one that we're doing, it says an astronomy size does matter, and it has the emblem on it, and that's gonna be a cool, just a cool shirt, and it's gonna be a high quality shirt, so you don't have to worry about it like shrinking in the wash or anything like that. We want to make sure it's good quality stuff, not some cheap, T-shirt.
Well, size matters, like you said.
Yeah.
So it'll be a big P&K with a little tiny telescope.
Yeah. I think the P&K is actually going to be right below the back collar of the neck.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. And then we might do the bumper stickers with some kind of saying just to make people think. Yep. You know what I mean? But that's in the future. We're not really, gunning for it hard. It's just something we had thought about. And I know Paul was working on some stuff because he has a printer down there by him. So,
cool.
Me, I'm in the middle of freaking nowhere. And
that's no wonder you want company.
Yeah, Paul's down there in central Miami. He's just south of the airport. So.
Yeah. The low riders climb up to the top of the parking garage and start doing their boom, 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 bouncing, and that's why the screen bounces.
I mean, Paul runs that mall. I mean, that's and it's a gigantic mall.
Yeah.
So he pretty much has free run of the place, and that's why he can do that. That's why he has his own office right there where, he could set up and, you know, it just comes in handy for them, you know.
Yep.
So the one thing we do got to work on, and the one thing that donation money is going to go for, is getting this whole internet situation fixed with him. He has the downloads.
Yeah.
The upload speed is just horrid. I mean, I'm upcoding this to make it look a little bit better. But once we get him, good internet, then we actually switch him to a HD feed to me, that I don't have to upcode it anymore, and we'll go. Yeah. It's basically like I'll be sitting right next to him and taking the 1080 feed, you know, and running.
That would be phenomenal.
Yeah, and then we won't have to put up with any of the artifacts that we see on screen, that we do see sometimes. When you have some clouds or stuff, you see a couple little artifacts, you know, a couple lines here and there, and that's all. You know, between the upload speed and the YouTube compression, which amazes me sometimes how crappy it is. They are trying to get better with this new update they just did with YouTube. Did address some compression issues, but so we're working on it. It's a slow but sure, and hopefully we just continue to get better and better visual for you. So once again, we can start identifying stuff a lot quicker and a lot better than what we're doing. And Paul just sent me a message, and we will see a satellite. Oh, his satellite dish is coming, so it looks like the satellite dish is going to cover. So I was saying, he said sat dish coming, and I'm like, what? I'm thinking he's talking about the satellite dish that's on the side of the building.
Yeah, he's talking about the ones that block the moon.
Yeah, it's coming in from the top. So you know what? What we're going to do? I think we're going to end it right there, Mark.
Okay, man.
You know, I think everything's good. Once again, check out SkyTour live stream at Mark.
Thank you.
Just click on his name there and hit go to channel. And yeah, we'll end it there. I'll slap on some music and I'll dim her out, and then we'll be done for the night. And then once again, we'll be back tomorrow night. If it's clear, we'll be good to go. Cool, man. All right. Yeah, it was good to hang with you and good to see you folks. Nice to interact with some of you out in the chat there. Actually, it was nice to interact with all of you, but I didn't get to say hi to all of you. I apologize. Yeah. And don't worry, people. Mark will be back. I can almost guarantee it. That's very appreciated. It's nice to be wanted, you know, but it's also good to have something to say. Yeah. So, and once again, we said, hey, you want to come on for a little bit for a chat? Guess how long it's been? 2.5 hours. Hour? I was going to say an hour. Yeah, 2.5 hours. Hey, look. Look, Paul just he just moved the scope. I'm not gonna make him keep moving. I'm not gonna make him keep moving the scope. I see the satellite dish. It's an eclipse. It's a lunar eclipse. It's coming in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again, and hopefully we'll be on and possibly even talking to you tomorrow night. So take it easy, and we'll see you tomorrow. Hey Keith, thanks for having me on. Yep. Talk to y'all later. Thank you, sir. All right. Bye bye.